Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Pod Strickland. I'm your host, Shwin and this is episode 436. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Shout out to the Eagles.
Yeah, we are recording on Sunday night. So if you're wondering why Stacy's happy about the Eagles, that should let you know why. We're not here to talk about the Eagles or the Giants. Maybe that's for the best. Before we talk about the Knicks, do have to make a few announcements. First, being that Strickland has a YouTube channel where you may be watching this podcast. If you are, and you haven't done so already, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment. That'd be a huge help to us. Strickland also has merchandise, which you can find on our website at www.thestrict.land. There's a link that'll take you to the merchandise store, and there's all kinds of cool content you can find on there, like t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, coffee mugs, water bottles, you name it, we've got it. Strickland also has a Patreon, which you can subscribe to. There are a number of different tiers. There's a $6 tier that gets you access to Pod Strickland, the podcast that I host every Friday at the Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, aka Doug, along with Zach Blatter. And you get access to the Strickland Discord where the conversation never stops. There are further tiers. There's a $9 tier that gets you access to Strickland Roll, my solo pod where I rant and with anything more. You also get access to wonderful premium articles by Matthew Miranda, one of the best in the business. And you get access to Strictly NFL, which, you guessed it, is a podcast about the NFL that is hosted by Konstantin Metrikos and Desmond Novak. There are further tiers. There's a $15 tier, $30 tier, $50 tier, and $100 tier. Those come with a variety of additional benefits, like listening on pod recordings, merchandise discounts, and even potentially hosting a podcast alongside yours truly one day, whether you choose to subscribe or not. None of this would be possible without you. And none of this would be possible without Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one source for everything football. Bet Online has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in on our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200,000. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of our over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet Online. The game starts here. Well, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but there is a lot of random Knicks news that is happening right now. I guess we can start with the most pertinent in the moment, which is that Precious Achiuwa has been ruled out or will be re-examined in 2 to 4 weeks. He pulled up with a hamstring in the final game of preseason, so we'll have to see how that goes. To me, this is a pretty significant loss. I am comfortable with Cat starting at the 5 and Precious as some backup 4 or 5, whatever you want to call it. I think he gives you a lot of value. His defensive rebounding is incredibly valuable, I think, especially given the makeup of the roster now. And defensively, given his athleticism and ability to switch positions, he's a very versatile weapon to use on the end of the floor. The offense can be rough at times, but he's also not a high usage player. So that kind of limits some of the, damage you can say that he can do when he decides to unleash. But yeah, I don't think there's any way to minimize this. I think it's a very significant injury for the Knicks. And we'll have to see what they do in the meantime to adapt, replace him in the rotation, replace his minutes. But with him out, and then also the injury to Landry Shamet, who has now been waived, who dislocated his shoulder in the final preseason, or the second to last preseason game, rather. The Knicks are, they were going to be kind of a thin team to begin with, and now they've become a bit thinner. I don't know. I mean, I guess there's a couple of potential positives from this in that, as your handle says here, Daddy's home, a play on Pacome Daddier. Daddier has looked good in his limited minutes in preseason. He's got a game that seems like it would translate very nicely next to the type of star offensive type players that the Knicks have. And also Ariel Hukporti has looked really good in his opportunities. And he is somebody that obviously profiles in a way that Tibbs kind of has gotten a lot out of guys that profile that way at the center spot. The weird thing with Hook 40, and this is where Precious is kind of unique, where it's like, I don't think I speak for myself, correct me if I'm wrong, when I say that I don't love Precious at the 4. I don't love Precious at the 4, especially next to Jericho Sims, but I think that's manageable. Huck Porty and Sims together is not like a viable option. So there's no clean kind of, oh, this guy can just take the Precious minutes. I think that's going to have to happen in the aggregate. I think it's going to require Tibbs staggering his rotations more than he probably wanted to start the year. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this, Stacey, but I think it's safe to say that the injuries to both Precious and Shamit they're forcing Tibbs into probably having to get a little bit more creative and maybe having to trust some of these younger guys sooner than he anticipated, expected, wanted to.
Yeah, I think if you could have said beyond Brunson or Cat, what would be probably the worst injury to happen, Precious had a pretty fair case with Mitchell Robinson already being out. Just because that is the thinnest position, right? We know all off season they were looking at trades for bigs. So that's a huge blow. Hamstrings are also tricky. So they said 2 to 4 weeks, but they said 2 to 4 weeks to be reevaluated. So you don't love that, especially for a guy who's very athletic and explosive. So it's obviously a pretty huge concern. I think that on both sides, I think no matter what, I will say I'll go stronger. It's not that I didn't love Precious before. I very much did not like it. I just generally don't think this team is in a place where Jericho Sims can play regular minutes, period. So it's not even just on Precious. I would have liked to see it next to Cat more. I think they did that a little bit in the preseason. That's the kind of staggering I would have gone with. But I think, it's encouraging to see. I said this in the Discord. I think this could end up being Leon Rose's best draft class overall. Maybe no one reaches the heights that Emmanuel quickly did. But in terms of overall depth, we probably would have.
You think anybody can reach the heights that Quentin Grimes did?
I knew that was coming.
Or the depths, perhaps.
Well, spoiler alert, I do think Dadier is going to have some low moments. Not just because it's a 19-year-old.
Maybe on your mom. Got him.
He's not. Well, he doesn't. Apparently, Jericho Sims. If we were going out on Riz, Jericho Sims would be the guy, right?
Yeah, like I did not realize Jericho Sims is the Riz god here.
I mean, he's a good looking guy, but and an NBA player. I mean, I've been told that a little bit. But I think it's very encouraging to see they've done a good job of mixing. This draft, what I really liked was they got a very pro-ready guy in Kolek. I think his defense is a concern, but that guy is ready to come in and contribute offensively off the bat. Huck Porty seems to be fitting that mold. I have still a couple of questions. Dadier came in more pro-ready, especially on offense, than you would think, right? This is not. I think what's really encouraging about Dadier, I've said this before. I think guys in that mold, when you get, the Knicks have been picking in this mid to late 20s range for a while. And we're always like, we need to take a swing on a 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" big. And you often see with those players, if they're athletic, toolsy, there's a reason they drop to 25, and it's usually kind of the other parts of the game aren't very advanced, whether it's shooting, whether it's, translating those tools into, understanding where your spots are, understanding your role, kind of fitting into a team concept, and just having some go-to moves. I think what's very encouraging with Dadier is that he is that mold of player, but the feel, and this is kind of it's both too vague and used, I think, incorrectly a lot, but the guy knows where to be on the floor. He's constantly moving. I think his defense has been surprisingly good. I'm going to let you finish. He's a raw guy, quote unquote, but those are the things you usually expect a raw guy to struggle with, and he's got those. So go ahead, sorry.
So no. It's I mean I apologize because I kind of wanted to jump in. I think the main thing, like when you just kind of hit it, you talked about those are the things that when you describe somebody as raw, that's what they struggle with. I remember, like, I mean, I think I'm sure we talked about it when we were watching Summer League, but even going back to Summer League, one of the things that was always really impressed me with him is I was like, one, I thought his defense was like pretty good in Summer League, and I know that Summer League, whatever, but you got to remember, like, he played against Brandon Miller, I think, in the first Summer League game against Charlotte, and he looked pretty good. Like, Brandon Miller is an NBA player, obviously.
A good NBA player, yeah.
Yeah, and he's talented. He's a talented offensive scorer. And I thought, look, trial by fire, I thought Dadier did a pretty good job on him. Are there some rough moments? Sure. Like, if you have him start having to defend ball screens, like, yeah, he's a bigger guy, so that can be a struggle for him. So that's stuff that he needs to work on, screen navigation predominantly. But I came away pretty impressed with him defensively, not fully understanding kind of the reputation he had coming from Europe of like, this guy is a bad defender, where I'm like, I'm watching it, I'm like, I don't know, it looks like a fine defender, at least to me. And then,
And also on defense, his on ball, his motor is good. His motor, I think you've talked about this motor work ethic. He's like the kind of guy people want to coach.
Motor, work ethic, and also just a gigantic human being like that.
Pretty good combo. And I think on the same note, he was making some advanced rotations on defense, which, probably one of the best help defenders we've seen in the Tibbs era was Emmanuel Quickly. His first half of the rookie season, even he wasn't doing that, right? And that's not to knock Quickly. That's what you expect from a rookie. I don't think Dadier is going to be a good defender. He's going to have some rough moments. If we're throwing him out against Jason Tatum and Brown, he's going to get his welcome to the NBA moments. But for the guy that we told we were getting, the things he's shown are very encouraging. My thought was like, this is going to be a little bit like Kevin Knox as a prospect, right? I'm not saying but like my thought was, Kevin Knox was a very toolsy guy with some shooting touch, and some flashes of guard skills. And, if he puts it together, and look, the reason I think that was people derided that pick at the time was that it was the 9th pick and it went over a few guys one of the guys who's on the Knicks right now, but obviously over future MVP caliber player in Shea, right? Off the court aside, Miles Bridges has obviously had a more successful career than Knox. So, I think that, but my thought at the draft was like, if we took Knox at 25, that's fine. We have better player development right now too. Maybe Dadier has, a better ability to improve. But again, I'll keep coming back to it. Like the things that the Kevin Knox blew up at Summer League because, he was able to get downhill and he was able to shoot.
He mostly just got hot from three at various points. He wasn't even like very efficient. He just got
which I think that's fair to say that that's part of what's happening with Dadier right now. And look, I'm not going to buy a 19-year-old shooter coming in and being an upper 30s guy. Period. Like that's just, you need the reps. And I would.
But I don't think that is what's like. So I want to go back to what you said earlier. You mentioned that like, when you say he's raw. Okay, we touched on the defensive stuff. When you talk about what a guy's raw offensively, a lot of times, yeah, it can be like ball skills and stuff like that. And that 100% is the case with Dadier. I don't think his ball skills are obviously very good right now, or where they need to be.
The weight room.
Yeah, it definitely needs to get stronger, whatever. But a lot of times, being raw is like decision making, understanding how to fit into an offense, understanding how to find your spots, understanding how to fill space, like find space, find openings, make yourself available for passes, and all of that stuff. Even since Summer League, I've been impressed with him. Like, he does not hijack possessions. He never is. He like in Summer League, it was even more stark because in Summer League is a time where you're like, okay, this kid's a first round pick. Let's just get him the ball and let him jack up shots, right? That's like half of what Summer League is just guys jacking up shots. And he never played like that. He never played like that really in Summer League. And that always stood out to me. That always impressed me because I was just like, it would be so easy for him to be like, I haven't touched the ball here in like 3 possessions because Dwayne Washington Jr. is a fucking asshole. I'm just going to put a shot up here no matter what. And he wouldn't do it. Like he rarely did it. I mean, there were a couple of times, sure, fine. But like in totality, he was very, very disciplined, very reasonable in his decision-making. And now, again, it's preseason. Don't want to get too carried away. But when you see him in preseason playing alongside real NBA players and and you see those skills and that kind of mentality translating. I mean, sure, is he going to shoot, fucking whatever he's shooting, 39%, 40, what he's not going to, I agree with you on that. I don't think he's going to shoot high 30s, low 40s or something from three.
I also just think the variance is going to be high because he's a young player. That's just
which is fine. But like, it's not about the percentages. It's about how he's playing. And like, I buy that how he plays can at least very specifically offensively. I buy that translates. I don't really have a concern of like, why would he be worse off ball in the regular season? Like, why would he be worse at moving off the ball? There's no fucking argument for that.
He'll probably be a little bit more disciplined, but he reads them extremely well, and it's advanced stuff, right? And I think he's especially
like that cut he had in the final preseason game where he like sees Cat pop out. Yeah, Brunson drives off of Cat pick and roll. Cat pops out to the top of the key for three. And they're like, Valanciunas, I think, drops off. So he's walling off the paint on Brunson. And Dadier sees his man kind of half rotate over to Cat, and he immediately cuts backdoor. And Brunson hits him. And, for all the, like, I don't think Brunson's like the best playmaker that's ever existed or anything. I don't think either of us believe he's like,
wow,
this. I don't think either of us believe he's like got this insane vision that can't be taught kind of deal.
He's not Tyler.
Correct. I mean, but you would agree that if there's one pass that he seems to really, really excel with, it's that very specific pass to a cutter kind of coming down the lane when Brunson's stonewalled in the paint, like he said, ran on that many times. Like it's a very specific, but that cut, recognizing that, seeing his man turn his head, and then immediately
it wasn't this thing where it's like, oh, I should probably cut a second late, right? It was instant, right? He anticipated.
Yeah. And I think like, I don't want to get carried away, but I think stuff like that, those instincts, that instinct is like, you can't really teach that. Like cutting to me is one of those things that I think it's something you do or don't do. Like I don't remember the first guy that came in and was like a horrible cutter and became a great cutter. Like I don't. I mean, maybe I'm sure there are examples, but I think that's few and far between.
Wiggins got better.
Who?
Wiggins.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that is just playing in that Golden State offense, right? That's like.
But I think that's a worthwhile point though, because I do think Dadier is coming in. Like, I'm curious how much easier it would have been for Obi to be more involved if he came in playing next to Cat. It would probably been a disaster on defense, but you see Obi was a really good cutter, and yet he would spend large parts of the game just standing in the corner. Not only is Dadier, and I don't think that's because Obi's lazy or doesn't want to cut or doesn't see cuts. It was just, you had Mitchell Robinson out there, right? Dadier is thriving off the fact also partly that we have a stretch five, or we have all these shooters and we have high gravity players that are like, that's not to take away credit. That is a real skill that, we've had other players maybe that wouldn't have capitalized the same way. But that also plays into him kind of probably being able to contribute right away. What gives me pause on all three of the rookies really is that besides that Minnesota game, we didn't exactly play a murderer's row.
But you're not. So how much of the regular season is a murderer's row though? I think that's worth like.
It's a pretty stacked league. I mean, we were playing Washington, Charlotte. I actually think Charlotte, given the team they put out there, if LaMelo stays healthy, they're not like as bad as. But Washington might be the worst team in the league. We played them twice, right? Washington.
Played Washington twice, and we played
Charlotte and Minnesota. And who's the fifth team? Was there 15?
No, it was Charlotte twice, Hornets twice, Minnesota. Charlotte twice, Wizards twice, Minnesota. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the worst team in the league, maybe twice. A decent team that's probably not going to be in the playoffs or even play in. And then a contender, and I thought the Knicks did acquit themselves well. I thought Minnesota looked like the slightly better team with the starters in, but the Knicks are missing Mitch and still gelling. My point is, I would like to see all three of the rookies, and I think it's less of a concern for the reasons you mentioned with Dadier, because the stuff he does translates. It plays off of the Knicks' other great players. But one, I'll fully say Dadier is. I'm pretty giddy about Dadier, his potential. I've been proven wrong before. But I think the last rookie I was this high on was Quickly. Uh, so I think there's a ton of and his ceiling is higher. I don't think that's in question because there is maybe this is probably like 95th percentile outcome, but he's got the coordination and touch where if he gets a little stronger and develops his ball handling, there's even some more on ball upside there too as he grows, which would be like, that's a home run. But even if he turns out to be a Batum type, which I see a lot of elements of that, it's a lazy comparison because they're both French, but just kind of the jack of all trades with good touch. It's a very powerful thing when you're 6'9". I think the worry I'd have more, especially now, is how will Huckport. I think Huckport is a really good energy guy. He's a big body in the paint. I haven't seen enough. How is he going to adjust to really good teams, the pick and roll, right? If he's, consistently guarding stretch fives, the defense and all that, I think he's got great hands. I think he might already come in and be, he's not the rebounder that Mitch is. I mean, literally no one in the league is, but he's kind of a big that can facilitate a little bit more, even though he's not going to shoot, right? But just because of his touch, his ability to put the ball on the floor for at least a couple dribbles. We've talked about that with Mitch, but that's probably the one player of the rookies where I'm like, I need to see more. I know Kolek because of just the way he plays and his pace. It's very difficult to guard. We've seen that with McConnell was a bad comp, I think, for Kolek, but guys who play at their own pace and can keep their dribble alive are really, really tough to guard. So I'm less worried about Kolek. I think Dadier will always find a way to be involved on offense. The shooting will come and go at times during the season. And he's got enough size to hold up, though he'll probably get bullied a little bit by some of the better wings. Huckporty is still where I'm really encouraged by what I saw. I think the athleticism is back, and that's part of the reason he fell because people were unsure about that. That's a great sign. How will that translate to being, the responsibilities that Tibbs puts on you as a five-man are pretty steep, right? So that's the one, especially now with Precious out, where I'm worried, but I still don't think I think you can't play Sims and Huckporty minutes. I think Huckporty has earned the first look as the backup five. I don't even like Cat next to him, to be honest. But a bench lineup of Kolek, Payne, Deuce, and Dadier and Huckporty, that seems like it could go really well. It also seems like it could go south a bunch of ways. So that's probably like Huckporty, Dadier bench front line does give me some concerns. I know they're going to stagger, but Cat can only play so many minutes. And Cat's a guy who's had injury issues in the past too, so you don't want to overwork him. Like you said, Tibbs will have to be creative. I think it's going to end up being Sims next to Huckporty, or maybe Sims next to Cat with Cat staggering. But I think that's where I probably would have the most pause in talking about the fact that it was preseason and the Knicks didn't exactly play a lot of great teams or even good teams besides the Wolves.
Yeah, I don't think they face the stiffest competition. I just don't know who faces stiff competition in preseason in general.
Yeah, so I'm just saying I don't know if I can draw too many conclusions about.
Well, I don't think it's about drawing conclusions though. It's about projecting forward and I'll be completely honest. Out of all the three rookies we saw, Kolek is the guy that I'm probably most ambivalent about as far as one. Do we really need to even do we need him immediately to play? I don't personally think so. I think between Brunson, Payne, and Deuce, no, not really.
If it's a choice between Kolek and Sims, though, I would go Kolek, right?
Yeah, just let me finish. I think that's a separate discussion. But Kolek's the one I'm okay, whatever. If he doesn't play, it's not going to kill me. I am fine with that. Dadier needs to play. He just needs to play. I'm sorry. If you don't have Precious and your wing rotation was already thin and then Shamit's already gone too, he's got to play. I just don't really I don't even know that's a conversation. It's just reality. He has to play. He's got to eat some minutes. Whether he's ready or not, he's got to eat some minutes. Maybe that's 10 minutes a night. Maybe it's 8. Maybe it's 15. I don't know. I don't really give a shit. He's got to play. He's got to play. And that's, that's the reality. It doesn't matter whether that's good or bad or indifferent or whatever. Like, that's what's got to happen. And I feel pretty confident in what I've seen of him that, like, if he plays 10 minutes a night, you're not going to completely sink in those 10 minutes. Like, I don't view him as a player that's a destructive player. Like, like rookie Kevin Knox is a destructive player, right? When he's on the floor, like, okay, the defense is going to suck and he's going to jack up a lot of shots and not make a lot of them. Like, that's just what's going to happen.
Well, Dottie is definitely a better finisher, and that is something that was the case in Europe, right? He can go up. I don't know if he's more explosive, but combination of touch going up strong, that is a notable difference even at this age with him and Knox. So
yeah, and so, like, I don't know, like, whether he's ready or not, I just think he's got to play. It's pretty simple to me. And with Huckporty, like, I'm actually, not that this is not a high bar to clear. I'm more confident in him and kind of hopeful for him to be able to be a fine backup center for X amount of minutes than I am about Jericho Sims. And I agree with you that, like, based on their performances and their, however you want to put that, like, I liked what I saw from Huckporty more than I liked what I saw from Sims consistently, like, throughout Sims's entire career versus Huckporty in preseason. But, like, I also don't. I mean, we can be honest. Like, we know that Sims is going to get the first bite at the apple, right? Like, we know that's going to happen. That's how Tibbs has always operated. And whatever. I think the key is, if he fucks up and it's bad, you have to make that move to Huckporty, give him a shot much faster than he has maybe tended to in the past. But, like, yeah, I mean, I think, the Huckporty thing is just it's just weird because, again, like, Precious is just very unique on this roster and in general as a player, where he's, like, kind of a 4, he's kind of a 5. I like him better at the 5, but he can buy you some minutes at the 4. And Huckporty clearly can't, right? Huckporty is, like, he's a center, pure center. And Sims, while maybe having the mobility of a 4 in some ways, is a center. Like, he's not playing another position. You can't really play those guys together, so it throws an interesting conundrum at Thibodeau in terms of how he manages that. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I guess we just probably disagree a little bit on Dadier. Like, I am admittedly extremely let's put it this way. What I'm saying about him on this pod is me trying to be reserved about him.
no, everything you said, 10 minutes a game for sure.
But
I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to hit the pause button a little bit because, yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, that's 6'9" wing was doing shit that we were praying for Cam Reddish to do for a year and a half, right? So I agree completely. I think like I said, my concerns are more, can Huckporty hold up against good teams as the center? But, if that will be probably more than 10 minutes a night if he becomes that backup 5.
Yeah. I tend to agree.
I think we're on I think
I'm just, yeah, I mean, I'm very, very impressed by what I've seen of him. And I'll put it this way. Like, I remember watching quickly in preseason, and, like, basically, like, the first time he stepped on the floor, I was like, I'm pretty sure this guy can play. And I feel somewhat similar about what I've seen from Dadier based on summer league and preseason, where I'm just like, I think this guy can play. Like, however many minutes. I mean, that's its own, that's a separate discussion. But, like, he just doesn't strike. He just has not profiled as a player to me that, like, you're gonna put him on an NBA floor and he's just gonna be like a deer in the headlights. Like, he just hasn't played like that. He seems to understand his role. He doesn't seem and I think the main thing with stuff like this is, like, he's not forcing anything, right? Like, this is not a guy who's, like, coming into games and he's like, oh God, as soon as I touch the ball, I got to jack up some shots. Like he plays within himself, but also within kind of the confines of his role on this team. And that's pretty important to me. I think that bodes well for him as far as his ability to eat minutes, innings eater type of player, right? This season. And obviously, look, if he's just a fucking neutral player right now, that'd be a huge win for the Knicks. And it'd be great for his development, obviously, because a neutral player, given kind of the limitations of what we have available on the roster right now with the injuries, would be massive. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also goes to your point. I think it's a good point. Like he doesn't try to do too much, but he also doesn't lack for confidence. It's a very quiet confidence. First of all, you mentioned this. I think the guy sounds like he grew up in New York. Like he does not sound like he grew up in France. I mean, Wemby does. Like
If I didn't know that he was French, I would not have been like, and I just heard him talk, I would not be like, oh, this guy's French. He doesn't sound like it at all.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of its own like little aside. But you've also mentioned this guy said when everyone assumed he was a draft and stash guy on a team with championship aspirations, he said, "No, I'm going to play in the NBA." Which you can say whatever you want. I'm not trying to say Rokas Jokubaitis should have done this, but it's an interesting parallel there. And the guy's played against grown men. He seems to have a pretty quiet confidence about him without doing too much. And I think because every rookie goes through bad stretches, and he will. That's but there's very little. I hate to be the pod that shits on Quentin Grimes, so I'm trying not to do that here. But I don't think we'd ever hear that quote about.
Why are we trying not to shit on Quentin Grimes?
Try to be fair. But I don't think that
I think it's fair to shit on Quentin Grimes. I think that's a fair thing to do.
That 100-pound quote, from admittedly not that much I've seen from Dadier's interviews, I don't think that would ever come out of his mouth. That just doesn't seem to be who he is. He's going to keep shooting. His form is really pretty, by the way. It's smooth.
It's got a nice release.
It's the one form. It's if you're looking at wing forms on the roster, it's the form I wish was getting scrutinized more because of how pretty it is, and it would bring more people joy than a certain other wing whose form has been scrutinized on the Knicks.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
But just very curious how, can you, again, I still don't think you could throw him out like heavy minutes against Jason Tatum or something, but he'll get his. And yeah, even if he's rookie year Obi, I don't think that's a crazy outcome. And Obi got minutes on a playoff team, significant minutes, and he had some really good positive contributions. I think Daddy is probably a little bit better of a shooter and defender. He probably is not quite the explosive finisher that Obi is. But I don't think that's like an out of reach goal for his rookie season.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as rookie year, like his athleticism he's fluid. I wouldn't say he's explosive. Not yet, anyways. Like he's whatever size he is. I think he is listed at 6'8". He looks bigger to me than 6'8". I don't know. He looks kind of like a fucking octopus, man. He looks like the same dimensions as OG almost. He obviously just does not have the.
He doesn't have. I think it's like a 6'11" wingspan that he was.
Yeah, he doesn't have the wingspan, but he's obviously not as jacked as Obi is now. Hopefully, you see that. Like his frame is great though. Like you look at him and you can see him filling out, right? And like being that type of physical presence that OG is, you can kind of envision that in your head. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to not get carried away with him in some ways because it's very tantalizing, kind of like the confluence of like size and athleticism.
I mean, when Cam had his flashes, we were getting excited, right? So, and I think he's in some ways more polished than Cam was, or willing to do those things more.
Wait. Like, I mean, he's also just not a dickhead, which probably matters a lot. He seems to like. I mean, look. In all fairness, like, I don't know what Dadier's rep was as a like prospect. I don't know what if he was hyped over in Europe or whatever. Cam was a very mega hype prospect, right? Like it was like a huge deal when he went committed to Duke and everything. And one of the main reasons he got drafted as high as he did is because of his hype as a prospect. And one of the reasons he kept getting opportunities in the NBA is because of his hype as a prospect. And that I think manifested in ways in terms of his mentality that were not great, where it was like, why am I not getting more touches? Why, like, I should be getting more minutes. And I don't know, Dadier doesn't come with that, right? In the sense that he was not hyped up like that. And I think that manifests in his mentality, where like the way he plays and like the way he operates and all those things. And um I
And
yeah,
I
like
think he's just universally, all his coaches seem to love talking about him, and he's called coachable and all of that, right? Which will go great with Tibbs. We know that players respond like that, like quickly, for example, end up doing really well under Tibbs.
yeah, 100%. So I don't know. I'm just, I'm with you. Like I am trying real hard to not get carried away, but it's tough, man, because every time he like plays, I see a couple things that I'm just like, oh, like, oh, okay, like that's fun, like that's really interesting. And
Well,
like
even like that, I think the most impressive play to me was he had that drive, kicks it out to Kolek. Kolek doesn't
yeah,
shoot,
yep.
calmly goes to the corner.
Relocates. Just he understood where the space was.
But it was a nice pass to begin with. It was a nice drive. Even though his handle isn't great, he keeps his head up on drives, which I really think is important. That's, I think, for example, that is, I think, Deuce's biggest limitation right now is he puts his head down on drives because I think he doesn't have enough confidence in his handle. So his passes, he makes some good passes, but they're usually after the drive gets cut off and he's like going out of bounds. Dadier, his head is always. I mean, that does remind me of Batum quite a bit on those drives.
Yeah, I mean, I again, like his ball skills are not there, but I mean, I guess the way to always think of it, or the way I try to think about it, is like, how often do you even have the ball in a game, right? Like, how often does a player have the ball? And he's just obviously on this team, he's not gonna have the ball a lot. Like, it's gonna be Brunson, it's gonna be Cat, Mikal Bridges, whoever. Like, it's gonna be a bunch of guys that are not him. Um, and if if you're not going to have the ball a lot, then how effective are you at that? And the way he plays to me is, he seems like he's somebody who can do that very effectively. And produce without the ball, right? His cutting, like the play you cited with Kolek, where he relocates, like that is like a very intuitive, intelligent, mature play to make, where it's like, I don't know that I'm trying to think, like, I just don't know how many young players understand that in the moment, right? Of like, okay, I can just, okay, I kicked out to Kolek. Kolek doesn't have the shot. He's driving now. There's the space. Let me go spot up for him, make myself available. Okay, now I get a three. Like, it's not something that pops in the sense of like, you're not going to put that on your fucking YouTube reel, and it's not that type of play, but it's a type of play that adds a lot of value when you're talking about, okay, Jalen Brunson is on this team, right? Like Cat is on this team. Like understanding how to play off these guys, find the space, make yourself available, make yourself an option, make yourself still an offensive threat without the ball. That's key. And look, we talked a lot about Dadier, and I don't want to just make this I don't want this to become Puck home Strickland here, but like, Huck Porty is interesting in that way too, where it's like, what can you do when you don't have the ball? And this is a guy, I mean, you watch him play, monster screen setter. I mean, this guy screens. I can't even imagine. Like, did he play with Brunson at all? I don't know if he played with Brunson. I don't remember it. But like, you can imagine the kind of space he can create for a guy like Jalen Brunson. And then it's not just, okay, you're a great screen setter. His like kind of comfort running pick and rolls with Kolek. I mean, the way he keeps himself in the pocket to keep himself as an option for the pocket pass as a roll man, that's like very mature stuff. And look, he's an older rookie, right? He's like 22. He's played pro ball, I think, for 3 years in Germany and then in New Zealand. Like, those are that's a real skill, and that's stuff like I'm sure we talked about it, but like you go back to like when Mitch came in as rookie, and Mitch obviously look he was a McDonald's All American. The reason he fell to the second round has nothing to do with kind of his pure talent level or how he's perceived as a prospect. It had to do with a lot of other things. That's something that like Mitch still. I mean, he that's not a thing he does, right? Like he's not a guy who's like I'm going to keep the pocket alive for you. I can kind of he is very purely like I'm setting the screen. I'm probably going to slip the screen, by the way, and then I'm just rolling to the fucking rim, and you
He
can
also
try
doesn't
to
have great hands, right? Like to
right.
get those low bounce passes. That's another. Huckporty has the confidence to know I can catch this, take a dribble, and yeah, I'm on a guy now, which is awesome. Um, but Mitch can't really catch the ball. If it's not a dunk, he's a poor finisher when he doesn't get a dunk. That is something I think Huckporty is a little bit. He can take one or two dribbles, right? Maybe not quite as good at that as a guy like Hart. Is a notable difference from Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah, and you mentioned the hands. Like Huckporty's got, from what I've seen anyway. Again, I can't. I don't want to act like I've been studying his tape for years and years and years. But like he looks like he's got really good hands. Like he's and it's a small thing. It's like you do this in the NFL, right? With like receivers, where it's like there are guys that catch it with their hands, or guys that trap it on their chest. Huckporty is a guy who like the ball doesn't like he's not trapping the ball. He's catching it with his hands. And I think it's just a very small thing, but it's a very important thing. And again, like I mean, look, I'm willing to just let you cook on this because I think it's a very interesting take, and I kind of like it. I think it's it's very rare that I like to give you credit, Stacy. But what I don't remember the exact take, but it was like that this draft class is going to be Leon Rose's.
Yeah, I think this will be Leon Rose's best draft class.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think part of what you're talking about there is like extracting the value from where you did with these various picks, but also very kind of succinctly landing players in positions and areas of need that were going to become important because I'm sure that, I mean, we know that even at the time of the draft, the Knicks had an offer from Cat. That was reported by Sham. So like they clearly and they'd already traded for Bridges, right? So in the kind of like moment where you understand our team is about to become thinner in terms of proven rotation players and our team construct has changed, what guys can give me the things I need and provide value? And you think about Tyler Kolek. I dismissed him a lot. I don't think I dismissed him. I was kind of minimizing what his role I think will be on this team this year. But you kind of like, okay, if Brunson goes down, we need a point guard. If we need somebody to run we talked about this last year, right? Where it's like when Brunson sits, who runs the offense? Why does offense like Tyler Kolek? He's got flaws for sure, but he's a guy who's very capable of running offense and is very mature and very experienced, right? I mean, he ran point for what 5 years at Marquette, so you already understand that. And then you get Dadier. It's like, okay, we need wing depth. So you get a guy like Dadier who you like, right? Whatever. And okay, our center position's kind of a who the fuck knows what's going on here now? Like, because we don't know if Hartenstein is probably they probably had an idea Hartenstein was going to be able to leave at that point. Probably knew that Mitchell Robinson was not going to be available for the start of the season. Okay, so let's get a guy here, right? And it's, I don't know, when you see all that stuff, I think that, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think the combination of like necessity, like need, thinned out roster, and identifying these players, like the potential is there for sure for you to be right on this, I think.
Yeah, and I think because they kind of were able to do both things, that's what's really impressive. To your point, they got guys, even Dadier, the guy I would have said it had the least chance of really contributing this year before the draft. To your point, I think the guy is, if this was 2020, 21, we're not even having this debate, right? We're like, stop giving Alec Burks. Burks is a good player. Stop giving him, like, get this guy on the floor, right? We're not winning this year. If this was not a championship contender, I'd probably be pushing for more minutes. But I think so. You get three guys who look like they can at least fill a role on an NBA roster this year. That's not to say they shouldn't get time in Westchester, especially once guys come back and you have some flexibility there. But they also got some upside, right? I think that's to me Dadier really flashing this upside as a potential really skilled, well-rounded wing with outsized tools. So you got a home run swing, but you also got three guys. You have high floor and some ceiling there, right? I don't think Kolek or Hukporti are all-star contenders, but also this about Kolek too. I also this was a big reason. I'll say this out of the draft, people were like, Kolek is going to run the bench unit. And I was like, well, you're replacing Deuce with a worse defender when you can just stagger. And the other part of it was, because you were going to have to squeeze Deuce, because guess who was still here? Dante DiVincenzo. With DiVincenzo gone, I see, even with Payne looking good, I've been impressed with Payne. I know his shooting numbers haven't been that great. But this is a quality vet. He knows how to play, gets to his spots, has good touch. And is like a solid passer. Like this is not, he needs to score first guard, but he's capable of running the offense. It's a noticeable difference between him and Deuce. But I think Kolek, for me, there was that. And then there was, what I probably did underrate, just how great he is at keeping his dribble alive. That it is a very rare, his ability to do that. That's the thing that's closest to TJ is way more unorthodox, but TJ wears you out because he doesn't pick up his dribble. And then you back off a little bit and he pops that midi, right? With Kolek, it's different. He's going to pass. He's
got the floater, though.
He's got a nice floater. I'm high on the jumper. I don't think it'll be like a huge weapon, but
I think like specifically when you're talking about Brunson as the midi, the main difference is like the space
You mean
creation. Or no, I'm saying Brunson has like when you're, I guess, yeah. Kolek does have a midi, but it's like I'm talking about in relation to Jalen Brunson, like because they kind of got comped weirdly, right? It was like, oh, lefty experienced guard from drop to the second round. I don't think he's ever going to have the space creation that Brunson has, which is fine because that's very unique and rare and freakish, to be honest. So like that limits kind of his ability to be a pull-up threat in the mid-range and even from from beyond the arc. But the fact that he's at least willing to take those shots is a good sign. It's a really good sign, and it's something that, correct me if I'm wrong, because I was not crunching any college tape at all. That's something that like he struggled with, and maybe wasn't even necessarily willing to take as much in college, right?
I don't know if I'd go that far. He's not looking to score, but I don't think it's compared to other guards, right? Other guards, nearly all guards bias one way or the other. I think what's exciting is he doesn't. He keeps all the options alive, his head up and his dribble alive. And he's not going too fast. I think the most impressive play from Kolek, and he's had quite a few, but there was this play where he's driving, I think it's like a 2-on-2, and he's keeping his dribble alive, gives a very subtle pass fake, hits the floater, right? I think he's also thrown a lob in that situation. It reminds me a little bit of Jason Williams, just like the fact that this is traffic. This is when defenders have to make a decision. He always, the other defender always blinks first. When he plays, you can call it a game of chicken, right? Like when he plays that chicken game, the other defender almost always has to blank first because of his pace, because he doesn't lose control of his dribble, because he keeps his head up, because all options are always a threat. That is the kind of skill. It's not what is typically mentioned first or second in the era of guards who are either hyper athletic or insane shooters. But that is Halliburton has this a little bit too. It's probably the first time I've said something nice about him in the pod. But that is the kind of skill that can keep you around and keep you effective for a long time. And I like the shot. I think he's got a good floater. He's got really nice touch around the basket. He's a good finisher. And he's off the pull-up game is probably not where it is for high-level NBA guards, but I think it was Jeff who was talking about this, right? That first shot that you want to do if you're developing that pull-up dribble is, the sit behind, right? When there's a screen, you sit behind it at the perimeter and take the three, right? So because that's like, it is a pull up, but it's not as demanding or taxing as like a step back or like a, the kind of stuff that Brunson will do, right? He's gotten that, and that's. So I think this is a guy who I think in a couple of years, if not sooner, is going to be a guy, maybe not high volume threes, but putting up close to 40, as he has a good shot selection, clean assist to turnover ratio. Probably will get good enough. I think I'm encouraged by his team defense, his ability to know where he needs to be is good. It's just really, he's not physically very capable, so he's going to get beat by some of the big time guards and bullied a little bit. We saw that with Johnny Davis, but
oh God, it's so funny. That's like probably the high point of Johnny Davis's NBA career so far.
Yeah. Well, I'll say I wanted him that draft. So that if you can actually say the 11th pick got us Brunson, I guess maybe you'd have to call that the best draft, even though we didn't make a pick. But so there's that, and then Hukporti, I think he's a big body. Like that guy's going to be in the league. Like these are all guys who feel like they're going to be in the league for a while, right? And in Daddy's case, you have high upside. In Hukporti's case, you have a big with some rare skills as well. Good hands, good athleticism, but really big size. He is a big center. We'll see about the defense, if he has the ability to be more than a drop defender, but seems to know where to be. So I think this is a nice combination of three guys who can contribute and have a reasonably high floor. And then I will say, in terms of upside, I still think Kolek I could see Kolek being a starting point guard on a solid team. I just,
I don't think there's much more than that there, though.
I don't think he's going to be an all-star.
And I'll be completely honest. Like, if we're just talking about like average outcomes for these guys, I think Kolek's average outcome is like solid bench point guard, which is fine. Like that's like a good player.
And I think he's already close to that, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think Daddier might have even his average outcome still might be rotation wing.
You might have given away the goose by calling him Daddier.
It rolls off the tongue. By the way, public service announcement: please do not say P Daddier, Puff Daddier.
Yeah, no P Daddy. Yeah, we could do Pac. Pac is good.
I don't think this guy buys baby oil, so let's leave those nicknames at the door.
Maybe not. Maybe even if he does, I don't know if he's buying 10,000 bottles worth.
But I think it's fair to say he has the highest 90th percentile outcome, or 95th. Even his median outcome, like those guys play. If you're that big, you know what you're doing, and you can shoot, you're gonna get minutes. So even his median outcome might be better than Kolek's. But so he's the upside guy, and that's a nice mix where the other draft classes, Obi, Obi is now
Sabrina, let's go, baby! First shot made. Let's go.
I'm not. I should have it on. What's the score?
She's 56-52 Liberty. I think she's 1 of 14 from the field now.
Yeah, hopefully this isn't John Starks again. Sorry for the bad memory. But if you compare it to the other draft classes, right? Quickly might end up being an all-star. Who knows? He's certainly gotten a contract where I think Seth made a good point that 4th, 5th rotation guys are going to start getting $30 million a year under the new second apron. But I think Toronto's betting on higher upside. They're putting the ball in his hands. He had a good offensive year for them. But I still think Dadier's upside is probably even higher than that. I think his upside is higher. And Obi, for the 8th pick,
can we just? I want to make sure that we're framing this properly. When you're talking about upside, you're talking about like 99th percentile outcomes.
I'm even saying 95th.
Okay, but you're talking about like the high end of the high end outcomes.
But I'm saying even if Daddier doesn't the 99th is the dribble game really comes alive. He makes huge improvements there, and can actually be a top wing scoring option in the mold of I don't want to say like KD, but yeah, you've seen those scoring wings who can like create their own shot and how dangerous they are. That would be 99th. 90th to 95th is like Batum, which is pretty good, right? That's
That'd be great. That'd be fucking phenomenal. Yeah,
like
man.
one of the best role players, probably had close to all-star level impact at times in his career. And if that's overstating it, but I think
I've got a comp for you. Like this, and this is probably lower end than Nick Batum, but I think this is definitely like in the cards for this guy potentially. This level of player, Wilson Chandler.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's a better shooter, but
yeah,
and I think one thing that I don't think he'll be great at defending any one position. That's the thing. We always called Wilson Chandler a versatile defender. He was never a great defender at any one position, but you could plug him in so many places, right? And he can hold up. That in itself is pretty valuable. So I don't mind Wilson Chandler as a comp, but I think he might have the highest upside of any of the players the Knicks have taken besides maybe Obi. Obi might have had a higher 99th percentile outcome just because if he does figure out the defense and if he's a 40% 3-point shooter, that still could be like a pretty insane player. But you look at that draft, you got two guys. One didn't end up finishing his first contract. Neither of them did, right? Both, Obi at least is making a second contract, which is not something you say about all 8th to 9th picks. Quickly, obviously, outperformed this slot. And then the other draft the other big draft they had was Deuce, Grimes, Sims, and Jokovitis. Jokovitis still hasn't come over. Dottie already is. Sims is basically the same type of pick as Huckporty. And I think we're already at the point where it's at least a debate. I think you and I both think that Huckporty probably is already a better player. So you get that. I think that you win on that. And then the question is, you have Grimes and Deuce. Can Kolek and Dadier outperform Grimes and Deuce? I'm still really high on Deuce. But also like Kolek, because of it's for the opposite reasons, right? For the limitations as a creator, he might also be just the guy who's a really good bench guard. So that could end up being a wash. And then it's Dottie or Grimes, which Grimes probably came in a little bit. I mean, he should have been starting early in that season, right? But he was behind Fournier. He came in and was shooting the ball at a high clip, playing really good defense. Say what you want about Grimes. He won us a playoff game late with his defense, right? But I think Dadier does have a lot more upside. And I think that lack of upside, that lack of ability to contribute when you're not shooting did hurt Grimes. And I think Dadier already has those things. And I think no one in that class, we knew, I think, that draft that Deuce, Grimes, Sims, Lucas Jokovitis are all kind of they have high floors. This is the type of picks the Knicks have been making, guys who can contribute soon, pro ready, that you don't have to like project too much. They didn't have a guy though that you would have said, could this guy be an all-star one day? Could this be the kind of guy who gets $30-40 million? I don't think that's out of the cards at all for Dadier.
No, I mean, just given his size, that's very possible. You just kind of, it's just asking a lot, right? You're asking a lot in terms of he's the 25th pick. He was not a highly touted prospect. I mean, when we picked him, honest question, did you even know who he was when we picked him?
Nope, but I did, after the draft, the people I looked up were pretty high on him. So
yeah, I don't mean it like to.
And there is, I will to there is, it was worth noting that a guy the Knicks maybe, we know they had interest in. I don't know how much Dadier took less on his first deal to get them savings. I don't know how much that played into this decision, but Ryan Dunn has been shooting the ball really well, and that is that was the kind of guy you're like, you might even just say fuck it, even if he can't shoot, this guy's gonna be good. If he's shooting the way he did in preseason, that could still end up being a pick the Knicks come to rue not making. But but it's tough not to be very impressed with Dadier, both from an upside standpoint and a floor standpoint.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, look, we've talked about these rookies probably much longer than anybody thought we would talk about them. What do you? Where are you on the Mikal Bridges thing? So Mikal Bridges shot. He went 0 for 10 from 3. In the final game of preseason, his form looks inconsistent, to be generous to him. Are you sounding alarm bells? Are you like, how worried are you? Where are you at with this? Or do you think this is probably something that just kind of resolves itself and he ends up being the 37% 3-point shooter he's always been?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a shot doctor by any means. I think DJ from Knicks Film School had a thread on this where he was saying people are talking about the hitch, but the hitch is kind of the symptom. It's really he's releasing the ball higher. You see this with a lot of players. He's a good mid-range shooter, and guys who are long, they have the long levers, long limbs that are good mid-range shooters. They have these high releases, but that makes it tough to transfer power, right? So that's what he's saying, and that's why you're seeing the hitch because that allows he needs that extra time to load up his legs. Or that hitch is kind of a result of just having a high release, but you're still not generating enough power. I think the guy's a pro though, and they've said he tweaks shot every season. It definitely is concerning that it looks this inconsistent, but I'd bet on the percentages. I don't think it's. I get why Knicks fans. First of all, we're gonna overanalyze. I think everything more than we ever have. And that's saying a lot because we're overanalyzing. I mean, PNT, we were overanalyzing. Can Sergio Rodriguez be the point guard of the future, right? So this is not a space that has been immune to that, or at least I was. Maybe that was just a me thing, but I remember he had 6 points in his first game under D'Antoni, and I was like, this could be the guy. Can Mario Hezonja be a point forward? Blah, blah, blah. But I think this is a champ. This, I don't want to say championship or bust might seem harsh. So if you don't want to use that terminology, this is the first time since the 90s. I don't even think you could say it about 2012, 2013. If you want to say you can, fine. But certainly not coming into the season. There was time coming into the season where you're like, no, the expectation is you go to the finals. Boston is great. Philly's loaded up their roster. Cleveland is still there. But this is a team that's clearly built to win. So everything's going to get hyper analyzed. So you're going to see probably more of the Mikal Bridges stuff than you want. But I also don't think it's unfounded. It's weird to see. I also think people are probably underrating just the fact that he's getting used to getting the ball in his spots. I think he's shown the ability to hit movement threes, but that's not his main skill set, right? He's either been kind of an off the dribble guy or a spot up guy for most of his career. His spot ups are really the thing. As he gets more comfortable finding those spots and getting used to his role on this offense, because it's not quite exactly what he was doing in Phoenix. He still has to move. They're using him a little bit more the way they did with Dante. As he gets acclimated, I think that'll help. So conservative or optimistically, not conservatively, optimistically, yeah, I do expect him to get back to 37% 3-point shooting. I think Omar mentioned this in Discord. I think what's maybe gone is there was some optimism that I was like, in all of, playing next to creators he hasn't had since he was in Phoenix, but now with the benefit of a few more years, can he actually have a career shooting season? Maybe that's not in the cards anymore, but I would still set the expectation pretty high, but maybe with lower upside.
Yeah, I'm also not a shock doctor at all. I am aware that it didn't look great. We all watched the attempts, right? We don't need to act like it looked ugly. The shot looked ugly, and it's fine to be, cognizant of that. I also think, let's just pump the brakes a little bit. He's had weird shooting stretches before in his career. He's also a guy, you're probably more familiar with this than me. He developed a hitch early in his career, if I'm not mistaken, and this was like a cause of much consternation among Suns fans at the time. And then guess what? He got over and eventually became a good 3-point shooter. Maybe he's trying shit out. I mean, I actually didn't listen to the quote he gave James Edwards. But like he said that this is something he's been tweaking for a while. To your point, like the high release, that's something that he probably felt like he needed when he was asked to be more of an on-ball creator with Brooklyn. Obviously, his role has now changed again, coming to New York, more to where he was in Phoenix. And I don't know, like I think that when you have a track record like his, long enough as a shooter, I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And I don't know that this is that much. I mean, I personally don't think it's much to worry about. Or maybe this is just me being a homer, but like, I'm just not going to worry about it right now because one, I can't control it. Two, it's preseason, so none of it fucking matters really. And three, his track record speaks for itself. So I don't know. Look, if he is a non-existent 3-point shooter moving forward, then that's a pretty big fucking problem. But that's not something I'm anticipating. So I don't know. I guess I'm just like wait and see on it. But look, the mid-range shot from him in preseason has looked really good, like fucking real smooth when he gets those looks. And then the rest of it is kind of there for me. Like I'm comfortable with where I see his defense at right now. I'm comfortable with. I mean, I love how he's leaking out in transition. I love his ability to finish at the rim. I love his ability to, we talked about Dadier kind of playing off these stars. Like, I love the way that Mikal is able to kind of find his spots off the ball. And yeah, look, if you cash in a couple of those threes, we all feel a lot differently about it. He's got to do that. It's a big part of playing off ball. But even otherwise, like cutting and kind of driving in off the catch and pulling up into mid-range shots, all that stuff looks good to me. So I'm just not that concerned about it, I guess. Or I shouldn't say I'm not that concerned about it. I'm just not going to lose my mind about it. Right? Like I'm just like, I can't control this. And I don't really know what there is for me to say or do that matters in that sense. So I don't know. I get it, but like I just don't really know what to say about it, right? Like it's just like either he fucking starts making threes again, or he doesn't, and then that trade ends up being a disaster. I like to live in the world where I'm not anticipating the trade being a disaster, but I've been wrong before. Stacy. I don't know. I think the Knicks kind of have an idea what they're doing, and also like I think it's worth saying this. Like fucking Cat shot like shit from three, right? Cat shot like shit from three in the preseason. Why is nobody freaking out about that? Because we're all just like, oh, well, his track record speaks for itself. I understand his form didn't look wonky or whatever in the way that Mikal's did, but a lot of it's just based on the track record. Mikal's track record is a good track record. It's not elite. It's not like the greatest shooter ever, but it's a solid shooter. It's a solid shooter. And we can also be honest and say that we didn't trade for the guy because he's a nuclear shooter, right? That's not what the purpose of that trade was. And that's not why you're targeting him. It's good that he's a good shooter. That's obviously a positive thing. And that's something that makes him as valuable or made him, previously as valuable as he was, but it's not the only thing. So I don't know. I think I get it. Like you trade that package for whoever you trade it for, that guy's going to be scrutinized to high heaven, especially in New York City, especially on the goddamn Knicks. But I'm just going to give him the benefit of the doubt for now. And, look, we can revisit this in 2 weeks, a month, or whatever. Like we all know 3-point shooting takes a while to stabilize and kind of reach some equilibrium. So that's just where I'm at with it. Like I do get people's concerns, and I think it's valid for people to freak out. I'm not going to post about it. I'm not going to really try and talk about it much because one, I'm not like you mentioned, I'm not a shot doctor. I don't act like I know what the fuck I'm talking about when it comes to shot mechanics. So yeah, it is what it is. I don't know. I sorry, that answer probably sucked.
Well, first of all, Shwim, there's a lot you can do. In this country, when we have an issue with shooting, we're supposed to send thoughts and prayers. So you can definitely do that. The other thing I would say is it doesn't look like his confidence has been affected. That would be the big red flag to me.
Yeah.
There's another player who had a quote that was actually concerning more than his
Oh
actual.
yeah. We'll talk about that guy, that fellow.
But I think in the words of Deion Waiters, I would rather go 0 for 38 than 0 for 9 because that meant I kept shooting. But that is, it probably signifies that, Bridges is hitting these shots in practice. And if it's a new form, it just might be him adapting a little bit and taking some time. And you might still see on net that, oh, it didn't actually translate the way exactly you would have wanted. But this isn't a guy who had one good shooting season and changed his form, right? This isn't Landry Fields. Oh God, that was scarring. Remember 39% from three, and then it never recovered. Sorry to put that image in people's minds. I don't think there's a risk of that here. Just because the guy has played for several years. He's a seasoned vet. He knows what he's doing. And the Knicks front office knows what they're doing, to your point. So but I do think, like, are we going to see a career shooting season from Mikal Bridges? Probably not. Do I think he'll be competent? Do I think he's going to get the Josh Hart treatment? No, I don't. And I don't think teams are going to start leaving him open.
Do you think Mikal Bridges is better at shooting threes right now than Jake Tuttle is at throwing to receivers?
Yeah, one gets paid millions of dollars, one gets paid NIL scraps, so probably. Is he better at shooting threes than Deshaun Watson is at throwing passes? I know he just got injured, so I'll try to be insensitive to that, but
it's fine. You can be insensitive.
Horrible. But no, I mean, kind of just what we were just talking about. Yeah, so I think, and he gives you. I think they'll have ways to manage it. I'm not concern level is like observant, but not posting about it and all of that yet. I understand people who are, just because you're going to freak out about everything. We've seen it with the Yankees, right? We've seen it with when there's a contending team, especially when it's been a while. And you know that that's what's at stake here. Everything gets scrutinized from, can Ariel Hukporty play 10 minutes a game or Pakum Dadier play 10 minutes a game, to, is our big acquisition going through an extended shooting slump. So that's just, that it comes with the territory. That those are much better problems to have than is Frank Ntilikina's 20 and 10 performance against the Wizards in a meaningless game.
All right, let's relax, buddy.
Shout out Frank. No, but I do want to talk about Hart as well. So another topic of discussion.
Well, I just want to say this, because if anybody is freaking out about the Mikal Bridges shooting thing, like, I'm sure at times I will call you an asshole and tell you to shut the fuck up, but it's fine. You're fine to freak out. It's a reasonable thing to freak out about. Just putting that on the record.
You are not being judged. Just shit on. But I do want to talk about Hart. So I get a lot of the arguments, especially from Jeff. I think he's probably the biggest person who's talked a lot about it, about putting Deuce in for fit reasons. I was kind of indifferent. I definitely get that point. I think Jeff made a great point about it. Not only, whatever you think about the spacing, if I'm overrating that or I'm shitting on Hart, it's also, he gives you wing depth at a position, especially with Shamet out. You might need that a little bit more. I even saw, I think it was State who said maybe we should be putting Dadier in the starting lineup over Hart. I'm definitely not there. I don't even think I'm at, we need to start Deuce.
P Daddy?
Yeah. I don't even think I'm at the point where we need to start Deuce. But I think that like Hart has struggled to make, this is never a guy who's going to be relied on to score 20 points a game. But he was, in the playoffs, he was 18 and 13 for a large stretch or something like that. He put up, he showed the ability to score when he had to. He just hasn't been involved. I think that's been overstated. I think he still showed he's gotten a lot of loose balls. I think it's really nice, to your point, with Mikal Bridges leaking out. Hart has had some eye-opening passes to him. I think they do have really good chemistry right off the bat. He still, I think, is making a positive impact in many ways, but you can't score, whatever he's scoring, low single digits consistently, right, as a starter on a contender. I think, though, I wasn't really that concerned because I also was like, it's Josh Hart. We know this guy doesn't, he gets shit on for not going hard at practice. We know when it's game, this guy's a gamer, right? That's the definition of his game. He will show up when it matters. He's going to show up in playoffs. He'll give you 48 minutes if you need it. He'll get you 15 rebounds if you need it. He'll go after loose balls. He'll put his body on the line. And he's just probably not going to do that as a vet in preseason, which good because we definitely, and he's coming off an injury, right? What was concerning was when he said, "I'm lost right now," because that made me like second guess, like, oh, maybe he wasn't just going 50%. Maybe there's a real issue here. I think it's still too early to like Tibbs is not. This is just not Tibbs' track record. He's going to wait 20 games before he makes any serious changes. But I would argue that I'm more concerned about what Hart said, certainly than his performance, but maybe even the Bridges shot stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not that concerned about what Hart said. Hart says shit, so whatever. He just says shit. He said something last year along these lines too, right? So,
but he drinks breast milk. No, sorry, only his wife's breast milk. But
yes, only his wife's breast milk. But no, but he mentioned last year, like he had a quote where he's like, I'm not involved or whatever the fuck it was. I don't remember the particulars of it, but he said something along these same lines. I'm not that worried about it in that sense at all. One, when you're in this type of all-in championship or bust, we're in it to win it type of fucking season and stretch of where you are as a team. Hopefully it's not just one season, right? We're thinking about this as like a 2 or 3 year thing. You're in New York City. You play for the Knicks. There's already, you're already under a magnifying glass that very, 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 very few other franchises in any sport kind of ever have to exist under. I love Josh Hart's kind of just willingness to say whatever the fuck when he's in front of the media. Straightforward, straight shooter, whatever, however you want to phrase it. I appreciate that. I think it's cool. I like it. And it makes him who he is, right? Like it's part of his personality. There are some things you need to just not fucking say because we don't need that shit right now. We have another, like, you already got half the fucking fan base freaking out about Mikal Bridges' shot. You've got people freaking out about Precious Chua being hurt and XY, 55 other fucking things. The last thing we need is a key rotation player, starter for that matter, talking about, I don't even know what the hell, like, just like whatever I don't even remember the exact quote, whatever the fuck he said. We don't need that shit, man. We do not need that shit. Keep that shit to yourself. Nobody wants to fucking hear it, buddy. All right? And by the way, if it's hard for you to find a fucking rhythm, look in the fucking mirror, pal. Take a shot. Take a fucking shot. You're open from 3. Look at the fucking basket and pull the trigger. And but no, he won't do that. No. He'll, let me pump fake and I don't want to shoot this. So let me go dribble into a dribble handoff with somebody, or I'll drive in and king it up. Like, so a lot of it's like you can sit there and bitch about your fucking role and you're not in rhythm and this thing and that thing and whatever the fuck. Look in the mirror, buddy, because you're not doing yourself any favors. If you want to get into a rhythm, that's on you too, bud. Like, you know how you find a rhythm? Look at the fucking basket. Shoot the fucking ball. Like, he said, right? Oh, I'm going to work on my 3 ball all summer. That's the thing I'm working on. Okay. Show me. Show us you're working on your 3. Has he made a 3 in the preseason? How many 3s did he even fucking take? Forget making. How many 3s did he even take? And don't tell me you're not involved. Don't tell me you're not part of the offense. I watched all the preseason games. He touched the ball plenty. He is plenty involved. I do not want to hear it. And, then he said something today about, like, we got to all sacrifice, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, we all do got to sacrifice. And guess what, pal? You're the 5th man on the totem pole. Last guy on the team, like last guy in the deal type shit. Like, you gotta accept that because that's what it is. That's what it is. You're not the franchise player. You're not the second option. You're not the third option. You're not anything more than what you are, which is the 5th option in that starting lineup. So if you want to find a rhythm that's on you. Figure out your role, bud. Figure out your role. Adapt to your role and play within that role. all the shit we just talked about Pacome Dadier, right? Oh, we understand his role. He plays within it so well. Blah blah blah. That's what we love about Josh Hart. That's what we loved about Josh Hart last year. It's like everything that we was asked to do, he was adaptable. He made it happen, right? Oh, you got to play the 4. Oh, you got to, whatever the fuck was asked of him, he did it. I would be lying to you if I said I was not disappointed seeing that quote from him, of all people, after the game. The final preseason.
Do you think he's going into pity for himself and letting a wind carry him across
all the while? It's an old who posted that? It's my sister. It was Parvati. But no, like I don't know. But yeah, it is disappointing to see him say something like that. And honestly, when to the point that Jeff made consistently, which I think was a very legitimate point and was reasonable and pretty well constructed and thought out. If that is really an issue for him, and I'm not saying it maybe it is. Maybe that is just an issue for him. Then, like maybe it is good for him to come off the bench then, because he will be more involved off the bench. He will have a more kind of like important on-ball role.
The ball is just going to move more as well, right? Even if you stagger. Yeah. I mean, if you stagger with Brunson, maybe not as much, but we know that he can play with Brunson. It's probably both Brunson and Cat, and then Bridges, right? You move him a little bit away from those guys. I don't know that the I'm lost thing was honestly more concerning to. This is a guy we know he can find his role, right? To your point, he's complained last year. He says what's on it. This is not a guy who filters much, right? I also usually think that when he says stuff, it's not always an indicator that he's like mad or right? He's upset or doesn't want to be here. I think it's just a guy who's gonna, he's going to answer with what's on his mind. But I'm worried more. I'm lost sounds like someone who doesn't have confidence, and if preseason is shaking our confidence like that, that is more of a concern. I think to your point, the ball will move. The Deuce is pushing the ball after every make. It feels like Payne does too. So in that sense, it probably helps him a little bit, maybe, because we know that's where he thrives. He's really good in transition. He's, I think Payne is pretty good in transition, but I would say Hart is probably a better, like if you want the ball, if you want to push off a make or something, or if you want someone to find an outlet pass, he might be a little bit better at that than Deuce. And if Kolek does play, and this also, you move him to the bench, you now don't have to worry as much about the fact that potentially having to play Kolek, Deuce, and Payne together if you don't want to play Sims, which I don't think we should. I think that might be a good solution there too, because we know Hart can play the 4. So like, even if you did go with that small lineup, if he's playing the 4 next to, you can play him with Dadier. He gives you a little bit more size off the bench and strength. Then that's really what, besides Deuce, Payne and Kolek are, not particularly stalwart defenders. So I think there's stuff to be gained there. Even if you move Deuce to starting lineup, he's probably a little bit more comfortable in that off right now just because of the shooting. Yeah, I mean, I think like you said, like I'm not. Hart wears his heart, I guess, on his sleeve. This is not a guy who's going. This is the guy who went up to Reggie Miller and said, I think they said "fuck you," right? And in many circles that may have come back to bite him. They lost the series. But he's unfiltered, and the Knicks could use a guy like that because everybody else is so damn polished, right? Even Cat. Cat says the right thing all the time. Brunson is the epitome of always saying the right thing. And that's good, but sometimes you want somebody who's a little bit more candid. I agree. It's not great to have that cause all the rounds on Twitter. I don't think he's a polarizing player, but he's just such a unique player that he gets discussed so much. But I think him going through confidence, like if it's a confidence crisis, that's where I'm like, all right, dude, like that is a bad sign. Do you hurt his confidence more by sending him to the bench? I don't know. It was nice that he seems like he's open to it. I think a lot of people worry about the size with Deuce at the 2.
I don't worry about that.
I think he's plenty capable of. I've seen this guy lock up Donovan Mitchell. That was 2 years ago. If anything, I think. Well, he's struggled with guys like Cade before, but that's a really big guard. But if he's guarding like Drew Holiday or Derek White, I think it's probably fine. So, and he doesn't give you what Hart gives you in transition, but the starters are probably not going to play I mean, they're trying to play faster for sure. They're probably okay without Hart though, just because Brunson's a pretty capable transition player himself.
I will say, I think without
That is
Hart,
like a transition cheat code. Sorry, go ahead.
the rebounding does concern me without Josh Hart in the starting lineup.
I think
And
OG's been pretty fucking good though.
he is, but like again, we know OG Anunoby. We know that this guy needs to be kind of carefully maintained. You have to fucking like really, really be careful with his minutes and all that type of shit. You're asking a lot of him at that point. It's like, all right, you got to be our best defender. You have to cover for Cat.
But he has been our best. He's been not just. He's been a really good rebounder, like boxing out. He has the length. He grabs. He has good hands. He's huge hands. Can get the ball in traffic. Like I would say, he just probably hasn't been asked to do that in his career. But that's like that's probably one of the more encouraging things from the preseason, was just how good OG has looked as a rebounder at that 4 position.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. I just think it's a lot. And then the other part of it is, you talk about the transition thing, playing faster. I think Hart's a key part of that. Hart's a huge part of that, because he gets those rebounds and he's able to throw those outlet passes. Like, how many times has he already connected with Mikal on those, right?
Yeah, no, they definitely, especially they're like the first game, even the first basket, I think Mikal scored, or I think maybe it was a cut first, but like Hart gets the rebound. It was like a Jokic type pass, just in one motion, gets the rebound, throws a one-handed pass in stride. I mean, it's definitely not something I've seen from Jack Tuttle. So,
yeah, no, Jack Tuttle definitely not capable of that. Anyways, look, the Hart thing is, it sucks. It's not that it sucks. It's just like, it's an annoying thing, right? Like, we already have all this other shit. Like, look at, we already talked about Precious being out, Shamet being injured and gone, and Mitch is out. And, we're talking, we might have to integrate these rookies and blah. This is just not a thing that you want to be thinking about or worried about or anything. And it's just like, again, like, you're a veteran you're a leader on this team. Act like it, buddy. Like, I'm sorry, like, it's not funny. It's not funny to me. It's annoying and it's stupid and it's lame. And I think it's a disservice to your teammates, to be quite honest. Like, I just don't want to hear about it. I think it's ridiculous that he even said this fucking thing. Especially given, again, like, the reason you don't have a rhythm is it's on you. That being said, I don't know that we should make too much of this. Like, as you mentioned earlier, Hart has kind of form for this type of public bitching and moaning, and then it really not meaning anything. And that's obviously well known about him. So maybe we're just being dramatic ourselves.
I wouldn't even call it bitching and moaning. I would call it more like this isn't the guy who's going to go into a press conference and be like, all right, I have to manage what I say. Right. I mean, he probably does more than other players.
Know. Yeah. And we I'm sure there's stuff that he knows. He's like, okay, I can't say this ridiculous thing.
Yeah. He's going to say what's on his mind within reason. He doesn't feel like this is something I can't say. He's not going to shit on anyone or do anything really controversial, but it's not the Jalen Brunson type thing, where he's always going to give the right response for the media.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen, they already asked Jalen about it, and he was like, "Oh, I got to do a better job as leader." I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck that means. Like, what do you got to do here? How is this on you?
he has that franchise. He's always had that franchise player mindset. I think even when he was in Dallas.
Yeah.
But he obviously wasn't the franchise guy there. I mean, yeah, like, and he's from a pretty, like, he was raised, he was in those 90s NBA locker rooms, which I think the new generation has a lot of things going for it, but the mindset was a little bit different. But it's the mindset where for Brunson to say, when they ask him, was this season a failure or success? It was the most successful season in recent memory. And he says, no, it's a failure. Did we make the finals? Did we win? Then it's a failure, right? That wouldn't have been an out of place quote in the 90s. I mean, Kobe's obviously famous for, saying that in the finals when he was up 2-0, or some, in so many words. Um, but it just, he's been built for this. Whereas Hart is kind of like an independent, quirky guy. I mean, he definitely seems like he'll be doing the podcast rounds, assuming that doesn't get replaced by AI in the next. You think is there going to be a Shwinny GPT that
I mean, it
trick
would be the most vulgar GPT you've heard of.
saying a lot? But no, I mean, I think it is what it is. I think it's also, there's so many new acquisitions. I mean, who's playing? First of all, there was a lot of turnover last year, right? Just during the season, right? But Hart is playing next to two new starters. Seems to have pretty good chemistry with Mikal. One starter who, let's not forget, Hart really thrived. I'm not saying that Randall got in his way, but he took on that role and had a different role this year. I'm sure even for Dante, it might have been a bit. I mean, Dante is just so good off ball, I think, and just will take the shots that we really want Hart, not just the Hart shots we want Hart taking, but like he'll take all shots and hit them at a high level. So it probably wouldn't have been as difficult, but there would have been challenges for him too, going from really being the second option for the Knicks last year to he would have been a sixth man kind of role player again, right? When he was, doing a star impression last year. So, you do have to, you can't, and this is always a thing, right? New teams take some time to gel. I think the Heatles started 8-8 their first. The Knicks beat the Heatles that year, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Like early on, and like everyone's like,
Yeah,
oh,
that was a great Gallinari game.
yeah. And I remember, well, they asked Clyde about it, and he was like, me and Earl Monroe took some time to adjust.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, it's like me and you, right? Like, took us a little time to figure it out, but now look at us, right? We're like a Hall of Fame duo here.
Who would have thought? Look at us. Who would have not? um, the So that's just for the whole team. It goes. Considering that, though, I think we've seen this offense, whether or not Hart is performing or Bridges shooting well. This offense's ceiling has been very clear. They've performed pretty well across. Like Brunson is Brunson. Cat is, even without the shooting, has been putting up numbers. OG has adapted well to playing the four. But that, it's going to take 20 to 30 games, and that's why I'm not expecting a win, even with Porzingis out. I'm not expecting a win against Boston, because that's a team that went through all this and had a not historic season, but they had far and away the best season in the NBA. Far and away were the best team. It will take time for the Knicks to get to that level, and you're going to see these kind of things, from a lot of guys on the roster. You're going to have nights where Brunson probably struggles, and to work with Cat, especially when we start playing some of these better teams. But overall, has anything from preseason? We talked a lot about the rookies. Talked about some of the things that maybe didn't go as positively as expected with Bridges and Hart. And I think it's actually, I'll add on that same note, I would say that if you asked me before the season, who are the two guys that probably will take some time to adapt, it's the guys whose role changed the most, and that was Bridges and Hart. Right, Bridges came from being the number one option to now having to play off two high usage players. Hart went from being the kind of Swiss Army knife Iguodala type even last year for the Knicks. I'm not saying it was as good as Iguodala, but that was his role. He kind of this is a big change, right? Being the fifth man on offense. He was never really, hasn't been the fifth man, because when he was off the bench, he's obviously has a higher role than someone like Grimes. And when he's playing with the starters, it was often they were depleted or they had starters out. The last thing, so I did want to ask your overall preseason thoughts, but before that, I think you mentioned this either in the Strict Court or on Twitter. No, you mentioned this, I think, in the last pod, on the Hot Hand Theory pod, which, by the way, hope you guys are all listening to it. even if the Josh Hart hate can get a little bit extreme at times. XJ and Jeff are obviously both great. The pod they did with Shwin, if you hadn't listened to it, is definitely worth listening to. But you mentioned Hart being used as a screener. Is that maybe, is that maybe a cure to get him a little bit more involved?
I mean, yeah, I think it's something that can get him more involved for sure, and I think it's something they'll lean into. But like, you got to understand, when you make that trade on the cusp of the preseason, he missed a lot. I think he missed part of training camp, right? He missed the first week of training camp, basically. Yeah, like if they're spamming cat pick and roll, there might be a reason for it because they're like desperately like, all right, we just need to get these fucking reps up. We got to get these guys comfortable. And by the way, their
Those
points
are
per
rookie
possession.
numbers. You got to pump those numbers up.
Yeah, but their points per possession on those during preseason, I think it was 1.32 points per possession on Cat Brunson pick and roll. So like, yeah. I mean, look, man,
That's got to be like, I wonder what Murray Jokic are at, because that sounds like what I would expect there.
Yeah, like I'm sorry that maybe you feel uninvolved or other guys feel uninvolved, but there's a reason why we're spamming this very, very effective thing. But yeah, look, I think this is all fluid. We know that Tibbs and things will adapt as the season goes along, and they will make changes, and there will be schematic changes and tactical changes and variations and developments that are made. So yeah, like I just, again, like the Hart thing just doesn't concern me in the sense of what Tibbs is doing or the team is doing. I'm only worried about his own personal mindset, mental part of it, right? Like if he really feels uninvolved, that's going to start affecting shit, and that's a problem. Now, again, to his credit, effort has never been an issue for any of us. I think with Josh Hart, whatever anybody has issues with Josh Hart, effort has not won. So I don't think that's part of it. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it would help, and I think it's a very useful tactical option they could have, but I don't think it's like, it's not the end all be all. I don't think is that what it means for him to be in rhythm? I don't know. I have no idea. To me, that it sounds like it's more about finding shots and whatever, but whatever.
But I mean, it doesn't have to be. I mean, there's an opportunity cost to your point, right? But you can keep a guy in rhythm, right? Just by getting him a couple touches, right? Get him involved in those a couple times, and then maybe that opens things up a little bit for Cat, right? And you have a diversity, because we're going to eventually face someone who has a good answer for that. So I think that was a good point you made. I think you even mentioned Draymond as kind of
Yeah.
I don't think he's quite the playmaker Draymond is.
No, of course, but it's more the idea of like, okay, I said Draymond light very specifically, and that's what it is. It's like the idea of, okay,
or like Bruce Brown, right? That kind of.
It's not like you're not really a 5-out because this one guy isn't really a shooter, but if the other 4 guys can shoot and they're such good shooters and they have such gravity that they're going to let this roll man then play 4-on-3, like that's a weapon, and he's a guy who I think we all believe can be very useful in that situation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think just giving him a few more of those reps will help. He'll probably get minutes with the bench, even more now with Shamit out and Precious out. He's probably gonna have to play some 4 unless they really do go into these Sims Hook Porty lineups. And I think he's shown. I don't think he loves playing the 4, but that gives him a little more space to operate. And if he plays with the bench, he's gonna have shooters around him too, right? Kolek is capable. Deuce, we know what he can do with his shot. Payne is a good shooter. If he plays next to Dadier, that seems to be a guy who's starting to prove himself as a shooter. And they could also stagger Cat, right? So they have some options. We've talked. I mean, and that's also what this comes down to. I think it's totally fair to hold Hart accountable. I'm not going to judge Tom Thibodeau on preseason because he's trying to get a lot of guys looks. He's going to give Jericho Sims and Precious stuff. I think you also just can't. You don't want to tax Cat too much in preseason, right? So I would have liked to see a little bit less Jericho Sims. I think we started to see less of that. But hey, we're probably going to need him no matter what in some capacity with Precious out, because right now the only proven center is Cat, and you want him playing the 4 a little bit too, ideally. But I do think a lot of this is they have a lot. They still, even with the depth issues, how they can make up for that is they can get creative. They have a lot of different guys they can move. There are trade-offs, right? You go Kolek, Deuce, and Payne together, then you're going to have and play them next to Dadier and potentially Huck Porty. That's what the 3 rookies, a young player in Deuce and Payne. Besides Deuce, no real plus defenders. I'm not ready to call Dadier that yet, even if he has some tools. I'm not ready to call Huck Porty that yet. 2 potentially negative defenders in Kolek and Payne. But you're going to have pretty good spacing. You're going to be able to play up tempo. You're going to have good playmaking. So there are ways to mitigate and trade-offs, and how Tibbs manages those, especially the first few months of the season. But there will be more injury. I mean, OG's going to miss time at some point. That is going to be a big story of the season. I'm not ready to deliver any judgments on that. You know what Tibbs' MO is. He doesn't love being out of his comfort zone, but we have seen him get out of his comfort zone when his back's against the wall. I think we've talked about this before, even when you and I were saying, I think after the 21-22 season, we're like, we got to get rid of one of Tibbs or Randall. But when his back has been pushed against the wall, that's when he has gotten creative with Hart at the 4. That's when he has done things like played, when he has played Quickly and Brunson together, it's usually without a necessity, right? Starting Grimes over Fournier, even though he didn't want to do it. Benching Kemba. When his back is against the wall, he does tend to be able to do that. Will he take this situation that way, or will he lean back on being conservative? I don't know, but he's going to have to adapt or die, right? To quote Billy Beane. That is going to be that's the difference between the Knicks second round Eastern Conference final or a team that actually can reach what we believe its ceiling is. And that's not to say I don't believe in them or to say I'm not even trying to start a Tibbs convo before it needs to happen. That's really not what I'm doing. I'm just saying that I've seen him be able to do it. And then that goes for every team. Coaching matters. Coaching is at the top 4 or 5 teams, especially now, there's so much parity. That's the difference, right? And the Knicks are in a conversation with, I think they have the 3rd best betting odds still. They're in a conversation with 3, 4, maybe 5 teams that are all championship contenders. Those kind of things. How do you play to the specific strengths of your roster, even if it doesn't have the exact best guy at every position, but you have guys who can do multiple things? How do you play into that versatility? How do you use that to mitigate your weaknesses? Because you can't build you definitely can't build a perfect roster now. The Knicks have built a pretty good one though, and how we maximize that with creativity, with proper risk assessment, that is ultimately going to be the difference.
Yeah. Yep. All right.
I did
wrap up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I know it's late for you. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I did want to ask. Well, we've been hand-wringing a lot. So ultimately, the Knicks beat the Timberwolves. Even with the starters, they played them pretty even, and that was despite Anthony Edwards having a pretty, even by his standards, strong shooting night. That's the game I probably watched most closely. But overall, after preseason, have your thoughts on this team changed? Where are you? Even with all these misgivings and positive signs. I mean, 1 point I didn't realize 1.32 pick and roll points per possession. Scary thing is, I still don't think Cat and Brunson are always on the same page. But it's just an impossible thing to guard because there's so many things they can do that they can just improvise. Brunson can improvise off anything, give him a little bit of space. He's getting that midi. A Cat can knock down contested shots or finish and pass. Has anything changed from preseason for you? Where are you kind of at it with this team now that we've seen them, even in an unofficial capacity?
I mean, I wouldn't say that I don't think it changed much for me, to be completely honest. Like, I felt pretty good about the offense once we traded for Cat. I mean, I felt good before that too, but I was like, all right, once we traded for Cat, I was like, all right, this offense is going to be great. So I feel really good about that. I think there's a lot of stuff defensively that we need to clean up. Still feel the same about that. I think there are really good signs in terms of the ability to find those solutions defensively, even if we have not done so already. And I also would say that I'm with you. Like when you talked about the Heatles, like I think I don't know if I said this to somebody or whatever, but like To me, the way I envision the season going is like we're kind of middling through 20 games, everybody's freaking out, and then we take off. That's it. Like I think that's how this season goes. And you know, I am concerned about the defensive rebounding with Precious out. That's definitely a very significant concern of mine. Defensive rebounding is weirdly my pet peeve and something that I'm very passionate about. Um, so like I'm genuinely like very concerned about this stretch without Precious, and very specifically about the defensive rebounding. But if we can weather that, and then we have relatively good health over the course of this, or normal health, I should say, over the course of the season, I feel fine. I think we'll be the second or third seed or something, and we'll be the biggest threat in the conference to Boston. That's what I think. You know, I will say like I still maintain Cat's not he's not close to like an elite or high end defensive center, but I feel better about his defense specifically based on what I've seen. So, yeah, I am very encouraged by that. Before we get out of here, let's close up with some season predictions. Let's put pen to paper or words to ears here, I guess. Give me your regular season prediction for the Knicks. Give me where you think they finish in terms of seeding, and then give me how far you think they go in the postseason.
Yeah, I think um, the Vegas is what 51 wins.
Vegas was 53.5.
I would take the under on that, just given how many issues on top of having to gel there are. And I think there are going to be other teams that are good. Cleveland is still a threat. Cleveland, we know, also just tends to do better in the regular season. I would say prediction in terms of wins, I think they get back to 50. I think this is a team that, especially during the dog days of February when Tibbs is still going for it and other teams are load managing and all that, that's where and they'll, hopefully have Mitch back, Precious hopefully all healthy again. I would imagine they'll have made some kind of move for more depth, whether that's at the wing. The rookie should be more seasoned by then. I think I agree with you. I think this is, I don't know about middling, but I think this is a team that's probably a few games over 500, 20 games in. And then you start to see them get 6 or 7 games over. And then I think they really take off in February. But I would go with like 50 wins. So I'd take slight under. I think they could finish anywhere from 2 to 4. I do think it's like Philly might be a better team than them. I don't think so, but that's certainly possibly a thing. But they have Maxey hurt. Was there been a prognosis on that, or
No, I haven't seen anything.
it looked like a scary injury. I will say it's the height of irony that Sixers fans were complaining about a very clean play intentionally injuring him, given gestures and everything. Get well soon, by the way, Mitch. But I would say prediction would be 50 wins. I think if I had to guess, I would think they end up as a 3 or 4 seed. But I think they'll be gelling then, and if they're healthy, I think, gun to my head, I'm still going to say I think Boston's the best team. So if we meet them round 2, I think it ends up being a round 2 exit. I think we push them to 6 or 7 games. But they have that edge and experience. I think we'll have the best player on the floor. But we've had it the last 2 years and we still lost. Until I do like Missoula a lot as a coach. I think Tibbs probably still has to show us a little more in the playoffs. So 50 wins and losing whenever they play Boston, but I think they'll take anybody else in the playoff series.
I think the Knicks go, I don't know, they finish between 51 and 53 wins. That seems about the range. I would probably take the under, but I also won't touch it because Tibbs is insane, and I would never bet the under on a Tibbs team just because he's insane. So 51 to 53 wins, finished second in the division.
And the conference, right?
I think they're a year away. I think they're a year away from having the kind of built up internal camaraderie, infrastructure, however you want to put it, and depth to take down Boston. I think they are. I think the Knicks are the second best team in the conference, and I would love nothing more than to get a chance to play Philly again. But yeah, if they play Boston, wherever, second round, conference finals, whatever, I think you have to give the edge to Boston. They won the title last year. They are returning basically the same team, and presumably Kristaps will be healthy by then. I mean, they won the title basically without Kristaps, which is worth mentioning too. Like, so they've proven the ability to withstand a significant injury in a way that we still have to prove, right? Like we still have to be able to prove like that we can overcome all this stuff and everything. So I think they deserve the benefit of the doubt and they deserve that kind of bonus. But I will say this: the Knicks are at full health and they play Boston. So I'm talking about all your top 8, 9 guys or whatever are healthy. They have a real chance to beat Boston because offensively, like I've heard a lot of concern of like, well, where are you going to hide Brunson? Like, all right, fine, that's fair. Where are you going to hide Brunson's a fair question. I think this Knicks team is really, really a tough cover for Boston. Brunson has fried all of those guys on multiple occasions. He is a very, very difficult matchup for them specifically. And now with a fucking center that can pull your 5 out, you can't just kind of sag off and pack the paint. I don't know if people are really understanding how dynamic this Knicks offense can be and dynamic in a way that they have not been able to be in the past in because of that ability to stretch the floor. So much of our offense was buoyed by our dominant offensive rebounding. I think we'll still be a really good offensive rebounding team. But now we also have the ability to really space you out and compromise your defense. So I think you would still favor Boston, but I think that's like a 7-game series. I really think we can push them. And, every team has to kind of overcome those obstacles and hurdles and, have those moments of pain, I guess, before you get to the mountaintop. Boston, obviously, this Boston team has experienced that. I think the Knicks are still in that journey. So I think they probably come up short this year, but I mean, I'm extremely, extremely bullish about this team in the long term, I guess is the best way to put it. Like I think forget this season, over the next 3 years, the Knicks will win a championship.
You heard it here first.
Yeah. At some point they'll break through.
You heard it here.
Yep. All right, Stacy, I think that's a good place to end this. Let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug. Other than the Giants run defense.
Hey, you can find me at Stacy Patton 89. By the way, apologies to the pod that you can't see my lovely face. I am transitioning between jobs and let my dad use my laptop for a work trip. Kind of a long story, but I'm from my phone on the West Coast, so you will be able to see. You'll be able to see the shaggy beard once again the next time we pod. But apologies for that. But nothing else to plug. I think we have a roundtable dropping, so I'll plug that and all the great preseason coverage we have. So yeah, and it's gonna be fun. And the only thing I'll say is enjoy the ride. We are anxious people. We invest a lot in this team, but this is what we've been waiting for, and let's have some fun too, even amidst the hand wringing and all the worries and the heartbreak, because there's gonna be some highs too. There are gonna be some great highs.
Agreed. Enjoy San Francisco. I'm sure that'll be nice. I have nothing to plug myself, so I will plug all the wonderful work with Strickland. Check it out, podcasts, articles. Like Stacy mentioned, we should have a roundtable coming up. Also, be on the lookout. I think we're going to try to organize a meetup maybe for Friday night, so for the home opener. So Be on the lookout for that. Other than that, though, I have nothing. So everybody enjoy your week. Go Knicks. Oh, and by the way, do you think the Knicks beat the Celtics on opening night?
No.
Yeah, I also think no. Okay, great. Yeah, everybody enjoy opening week. Enjoy your work week, if that's the thing. Enjoy your football, whatever's left for it. And I will see you on Friday. Peace. Thank you to our sponsor, Bet Online, by the way, too. Yep. Bye.